Okay, so we are going to learn practical number 10E. So this is all about threading. In Java, we use the runnable interface to implement the threading. The similar we are going to use here. Whenever an application is launched in Android, it creates the first thread of execution is known as main thread. तो एंड्रॉयड एप्लीकेशन का लॉन्चिंग मेन एक्टिविटी से होता है, ये हमने इतने सारे प्रैक्टिकल्स में देखा है. Specifically, if we are talking about threading in Android, so in Android you can categorize all threading component into two basic categories: thread which are attached to activity or fragment, because activity comes with a life cycle, as well as fragment. The upper layer is almost similar to activity and comes with an life cycle. So the threads that are attached with activity and fragment are tied to the life cycle of activity and fragment, and they are terminated as soon as activity and fragments are destroyed. So there are other threads also which are not attached to any activity or fragment. This is the second type. Those threads can continue to run beyond the lifetime of activity fragment. So that means activity close भी हुआ तो thread background में running रहेगा. So we are going to see about progress bar. Okay, progress bar component using thread. Previously, I have shown you the progress bar, but not an incremental order. We are going to see here in incremental order progress bar, actual progress bar. That means it will show. So what we are going to use here, we are going to implement the thread life cycle. Okay, and in thread life cycle, thread starts, thread stops, thread run. Okay, so running the thread, and then we can use timer options to make some delay in time so that we can see after few microsecond or seconds progress bar in increment. So first thing, we will create a blank project. Okay, I have given the name of project as A10A, your A division practical number 10A. You can give whatever name meaningful you want to give your application. Previous application I am closing. Okay. So in your new application, what we are going to do? So first, in activity underscore main.xml, we are changing the layout to linear layout, default layout to. Then we are also changing the orientation. We are adding the orientation, and then just a component we are going to add as a progress bar. So what are the properties of progress bar? First is ID that you need to know. Second is the style, question mark, Android colon attr. This is the default one already there in the system, but you can change it to another style. So this style is progress bar style horizontal. You can make it vertical. What we are working on horizontal. The layout width height. Okay, this is an important part. Android indeterminate false. So that means indeterminate progress bar nahi hai, determinant hai. That means it is having a point of start and point of end. Max is 10. So 10 increments यहाँ पे दिया है. Padding DIP में दिया है. So we are going to create one progress bar, one button, and on that button click, we are going to call. You can see here on click function. Okay. So we are going to write a code on click to, and here you have to understand that ID बटन. आप लोगों को उसका ID रखना है ध्यान में, क्योंकि आप लोगों को बाद में हम लोगों को बटन क्लिक पे कोड करना है. तो यहाँ पे ID एक बटन दिया है. ओके, और एक टेक्स्ट व्यू दिया है जिसमें हम लोग इंक्रीमेंटल काउंटर दिखाएंगे. स्टार्ट प्रोग्रेस के बाद इंक्रीमेंट कैसे होता है वो दिखाएंगे. So I'm going to use this one into our Android project. One progress bar, one button, and one text. It will go into code. And as earlier suggested, I'm going to change the layout. I'm going to make it linear layout. Okay. Then here I need to add orientation. Okay, vertical. And here I'm replacing the code, this code with new code. I'm removing unnecessarily part so that errors will be. So you can see here, Android on click start progress. Okay, this is the activity or function that we are going to write in Java code. At that time, it is showing you a red mark. That means this function needs to be written. One progress bar, one button, one text view. You can see into design also. Just modify that one. So I'll select the text view here and I will just change some of the attribute of text view. Just we will make it common text view ka properties. So something little bit bolder and something so that we will able to see the output in bigger font. Common properties, common properties में layout है. The common properties are here. So we will just increment the size here to 24 and we will just fill it bold so that you should be able to see the counter value. The next part we are going to do is we are going to implement that progress bar ka function, start progress line. So we have to make few import view progress bar text view and we will require normal java.utility class util.star to implement the. So I'm going to copy the imports here. Okay. We are using in main activity. So I'm just pasting import there. We should know this view import we are going to use for viewing the GUI, progress bar to get the object of progress bar and text view for getting the object of text view. Text view we are considering as a label. We are going to create two variables inside the class, private progress bar text view. A text view object बनाया है here. Okay. Now we will find the view by ID. So we need to identify the text view, find view by ID. We know that in our resource layout file, the text view is there, progress bar is there. So we have also typecasted into that particular type. So these two view we are going to identify. Okay. Here. Okay. And then this is the onCreate function. Now we have to write new function. So new function, the start progress, we are going to write after this one before the class end here. Okay. So you just understand this particular function, what it does. This is a on-click function for that button. When we press that button, this function will be called. This will start the progress. Okay. We are passing a view class object as an parameter here. Bar dot set progress to 0. What is the bar? Bar is progress bar. Okay, is object of progress bar, and we are setting its initial progress to 0. That means we are going to start. Now you can see here, two constructors are called: new thread, new task start, new thread, new task to dot start. So these are the two classes, task and task 2, that we have to implement. We need to write it, and they will be called one by one. First, this task will be called, this class will be called, उसका start method call होगा और task 2 का start method call होगा. तो दो classes हमको और लिखने हैं, एक है task 2. So I'm going to use this function. Okay. Okay. This is the function. You can see there is a red line. Okay, red line because these classes we have to write. Then we will write them. So classes we can write outside the main activity dot. You can see the class ends here. You can write here. So the first class, which is task. Okay, task में क्या कर रहे हैं? Class task implements runnable. Runnable interface क्यों implement करना पड़ता है? To avail the thread activity. So runnable implement has a mandatory method called as run, public void run. So in that method, we are writing a normal for loop which increments the I variable I is equal to 0, I less than or equal to 10, I plus plus, and every time we are going to use the integer value I, and every time once the iteration done, thread is sleeping for 1000 microseconds. Okay, milliseconds, sorry, 1000 milliseconds. So few seconds it will sleep, then फिर increment होगा. So you can see here we are making use of thread dot sleep for this much of millisecond. तो जो प्रोग्रेस बार धीरे धीरे एग्जीक्यूट करके दिखाना है वो यहाँ पे हम लोग इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हैं. एवरी टाइम जो वैल्यू है आई का वो इंक्रीमेंट होगा बट आफ्टर दिस मच ऑफ मिलीसेकंड पास. और फिर प्रोग्रेस बार का वैल्यू यहाँ पे हमने इंक्रीमेंट किया. बार डॉट सेट प्रोग्रेस जो इनिशियली यहाँ पे 0 था वो फिर 1 होगा, फिर कुछ मिलीसेकंड के बाद वापस से इटरेट होगा, फिर 2 होगा, कुछ मिलीसेकंड के बाद 3, 4 और इस तरीके से वो. So we can use this class. Okay. You can see task class का error गया है. Now second task class उसमें क्या करेंगे? Now you can see यहाँ पे progress bar यहाँ पे नहीं आया है because यहाँ पे accessibility नहीं है. हमने progress bar को कहाँ पे define किया? इस class के अंदर, main activity के अंदर, और यहाँ पे हम लोगों ने main activity के बाहर ये class लिखा. So what we can do? We can write this class internally. Okay, internally immediately after this method. If you are going to write that, then bar variable भी उसे मिलेगी because ये class अपने main activity main class के अंदर ही लिखा. So that you need to remember. तो ये class कहाँ पे शुरू होता है? यहाँ पे, and यहाँ पे होता है, तो दूसरा class भी यहाँ पे आएगा before main class ends. Then second class the same is same code है. क्लास टास्क टू इम्प्लीमेंट रनेबल थ्रेडिंग के लिए हम लोग यूज करते हैं. मैंडेटरी मेथड है पब्लिक वॉइड रन. रन मेथड में अभी हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? उसी आई वेरिएबल को डिक्रीमेंट करेंगे और इसको टेक्स्ट व्यू में दिखाएंगे. ओके, इसका मतलब प्रोग्रेस बार जैसे जैसे बढ़ते जाएगा वैसे वैसे टेक्स्ट व्यू का वैल्यू डिक्रीमेंट होता जाएगा. हमने रिवर्स लॉजिक लगाया डिक्रीमेंट के लिए. आई प्लस प्लस की जगह पे क्या यूज किया? आई माइनस 0. और स्टार्ट आई क्या से किया? आई इज इक्वल टू 10 to 0 तक. ये सेम लॉजिक है. यहाँ पे भी थ्रेडिंग डॉट स्लिप है. वो कह रहा है यहाँ पे इंक्रीमेंट हो रहा है और प्रोग्रेस बार आगे बढ़ रहा है. यहाँ पे डिक्रीमेंट हो रहा है और टेक्स्ट व्यू में टेक्स्ट हम लोग दिखा रहे हैं स्ट्रिंग वैल्यू ऑफ दिस वैल्यू. तो टेक्स्ट व्यू में हमारा वैल्यू डिक्रीमेंट होते रहेगा. कॉपिंग दिस कोड. पेस्टिंग दिस वन. Now we are ready for our execution. So run the app. Now, student, you can see our app is running. You can see this horizontal strip line, that is your progress bar. When we click on button, this progress bar will increment, and obviously the value in text view will decrement. So I'm just pressing this button. Okay. We are again going to start it. अपर साइड में प्रोग्रेस बार इंक्रीमेंट हो रहा है और नीचे 10 से लेकर डिक्रीमेंट हो रहा है कि कितना स्टेप बाकी. So hopefully you got the answer for this particular practical. I have shown you the execution. So let us move to our next part. Practical number 10B. So now we will move to practical number 10B. Here we are going to learn about handler, Android handler. So generally Android handles all GUI operations or user interface operations and some input events from single thread. which is known when we call main UI thread. As we have seen in previous practical, every activity starts a thread. The main thread is executed with main activity file. So Android collects all events in the thread in a queue because multiple thread जब running रहेगा तो one by one वो execute होगा, queue में वो execute होगा, फिर वो उसको process करता है queue को और फिर एक एक queue को clear करते जाता है, एक एक task को execute करते जाता है. So Android supports thread class to perform asynchronous processing. Android also supplies java.util.concurrent package, which perform the background tasks like using the thread pools and executor class. So why and what are handlers? If you need to update a GUI from another main thread, so that means the thread which is running is separate and another main thread also affecting your GUI, updating, modifying or writing something. So then you need to synchronize with the main thread. Because of these restrictions and its complexity, Android provides additional constructed class to handle the concurrently comparison with standard Java. That class we can call as a handler or asynchronous task because another thread is updating a main UI. So what this class handler or async task class is doing, it allows communicating back with the UI thread from other background thread. So multi-threading और जिसे हम लोग multitasking बोलते हैं वो यहाँ पे possible है. That means the second thread can communicate with the original one. So this is useful in Android as Android doesn't allow the other thread to communicate directly with UI thread. So in Android, if you want multiple threads to communicate, then you have to use handler or async. You can see here in the diagram it was shown some thread is running in the background, okay, and the GUI thread is here main activity. So you can use the handler class so that this background thread can communicate to main thread, okay. It might be message or runnable or something else. Task 1, task 2, handler 2 can also communicate with main thread. Without handler, you cannot communicate to main GUI or the thread cannot communicate. So handler allows you to send and process message and runnable object associated with threads message. Because multiple tasks रहेंगे तो one by one task execute होगा, वो message queue में रहेगा. So there are two main uses of handler. The handler can schedule the message and runnable to execute it at some point in future because message queue में रहेगा तो immediate execute नहीं होगा. Queue जैसे जैसे clear करते रहेंगे वैसे वैसे वो execute होगा. And also it can be used to enqueue an action to be performed on different threads than your own. तो आप लोगों का जो क्रिएटेड थ्रेड है उसको छोड़ के मेन एक्टिविटी या फिर जो एक्टिविटी GUI वाला पार्ट रहेगा वहां पे आप लोग थ्रेड को कुछ एक्शन दे सकते हो, मॉडिफिकेशन या चेंजेस. सो हाउ इट कैन बी डन? So scheduling messages accomplished with post runnable interface. There are methods that class handler and async class tasks are providing. Post runnable, post at time, specific time पे अगर उसको execute करना रहेगा तो post delayed after some time, send empty message to get the at least communication start, send message with the message, send message at time, that is again the similar like post at time, send message at time, particular time पे message send किया जाएगा. मैसेज डिलेट का भी एक पर्टिकुलर मेथड पैरामीटर के साथ रहेंगे. सो लेट अस execute few of these concepts in our practical. So what we are going to do here, you can see by getting the explanation of this file. In activity main.xml, we are going to change the layout to linear layout. You know that how it is done, and we are going to keep the Android orientation vertical. You can see here one is text view with the ID text view. So that means one label is there. Then one button is there. You can see button is having some ID for starting the timer. Okay. And it has one property on click timer. So that means on the first button, we are going to call the timer function. Okay. What is happening in timer function? Shortly, I will explain to you. Then second button, we are getting start non-timer, okay, non-time. So that will issue, and we are going to use a function called as non-timer. Okay. So first we will get these things there. Okay, so I'm copying this one. Okay, for this execution, I have created a empty project A10B. Okay, class is already loaded. So we will change the code. So as suggested, we are going to change the layout to smooth functioning, and we are going to add Android orientation vertical. Other than that, we are going to add one text view and two buttons. So you can see one text view with ID, one button with ID and click function, okay, and second button with ID and click function. So the on-click function timer and on-click function non-timer, we have to implement it main activity.java. Till that time, it will give you a red flag suggesting you to implement the functions into main activity.java. So let us see first what is there in timer function. So before we go for that implementation of on-click function, you need to know what kind of classes we will require to import. So as earlier discussed, we are using handler. So Android.os.handler we need to import. And to deal with UI, we will require view class, button class, and text view class. Okay. So I'm just copying this class to import in our main activity.java. Post here. And again, we will also require this three class. Okay. Now, in the class, main activity class, we are going to declare two objects, one object of text view, okay? And second one is integer type of variable, which value, initial value will be 30. So creating two objects, okay? The next part is identifying the UI component, finding the UI component. So what kind of UI component we need to find? Only one, text view. So that line I'm posting here, text view, find view by ID. Okay, I'm copying this one, and here in on create, we are going to identify the text view. You can see that r.id means resource file में text view हमारा है, which is there. You can see text view, उसका text view ID है, तो ये function इसको identify करेगा Java में. So now this is the on create function, and now we have to implement timer and non-timer. Okay, so let us see what is happening in timer function. So we have written public void timer. Here we are passing the view class object. And first we are going to create a handler class object. Final handler equal to new handler. So here we have created handler class object, and this handler class can post. You know that multiple post methods are there built in, but we are using normal post. Handler dot post new runnable. Whenever we are using new runnable, it causes the thread to start. And whenever we are calling new runnable, so we have to implement a mandatory method called as public void run to start the thread. So public void run, here we have just checked if stop loop is greater than 0, which is there. Stop loop variable is 30. So then this particular part will implement. Stop loop minus minus हो जाएगा, and text view में text set होगा time stop loop, जो भी time रहेगा, okay? And this will be posted delay by handler class. Handler dot post delayed this the same object, and these are again millisecond, okay? 1000 millisecond. Else अगर वो if में नहीं होता है तो else block में we have not written anything because we know that the value is more. This is one part. In non-timer function, we have written normal function I is equal to 0, increment किया उसको 3 तक I plus plus, and text view का set text करेंगे time and I का जो भी part रहेगा. So second button click करने के बाद this activity will be done. Here we have used the previous class का code, previous practical का code, thread dot. Okay, you can see that thread dot. So I'm just using this code. Separate functions है. Remember where to write the code and where to end the code. So here we are going to write one thing, and there will be one extra line that I am. you can see we have implement the function. You will see यहाँ पे जो error दिखा रहा था आपको टाइमर को और नॉन टाइमर को, वो भी रिमूव हो गया. And now we will run the project. You can see count variable ऊपर आया है. Okay. When we start the timer count, we start from 30, 29, 27. Okay. So this is done with the GUI modification with the handler का post delayed method. You can see side by side. This is executing now. Okay. This loop is decremented. Okay. Then else में we have not written anything. So जैसे ही 0 हो जाएगा तो nothing is been done. And now we can start the non-counter part, which is already वहाँ पे था, तो वो 1, 2, 3 तक जाएगा. Every click में वो post delayed होकर millisecond में वहाँ पे you can see. Okay. So this is the output of your program.